Welcome back to another in our series of great chapters in the Bible. Our chapter today comes from the Old Testament prophet Daniel. Daniel chapter 1, taken to Babylon. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food, or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink. For why should he see that you are in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel said to the steward whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter, and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and the enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the 1st year of King Cyrus. Recently, my graduating class just celebrated the anniversary of our commencement into adulthood from high school. That's right, we had our reunion. I won't tell you what year I graduated or which year reunion it was, because then you would do the math and figure out I'm not actually 39 years old. But I do celebrate the nth anniversary of my 39th birthday each year. I felt fortunate to have spent my entire childhood in one school system. I saw, for the most part, the same faces each fall on the first day of school from kindergarten through the 12th grade. And we all walked across the stage to receive our diploma when we graduated. There was a kindred spirit, as it were, among us. However, not everyone had that experience. Each year, some students moved away and others moved into our community. It's hard for me to comprehend what that feeling must be like to be transplanted into a new and foreign town. In high school, there was an even more perplexing dilemma in which we had a foreign exchange program in which students came to live in our town for a year. They came from all over the world. Some from South America, some from Europe, New Zealand, among other places. they were immersed into a completely new culture. New friends, new family, and in some cases, a new language. Most would tell of being homesick while they tried to make the adjustment. But they somewhat knew that they were in for a new experience because they willingly volunteered to come. In our chapter today, we are given a tremendous amount of information to sift through. Historical and cultural differences have to be sorted through, dates and places reconciled. We have the easy part. We're on the outside looking in at this situation. But these four youths we are introduced to are caught up in a battle they didn't choose, in a place and culture they had no comprehension. Everything must change. They're no longer in Judea, but hundreds of miles away in the land of Shinar, in the region of Babylon. They must learn a new language, eat new food, learn the ways of the Babylonians, or Chaldeans as they're called. They are given new names. Everything about their life is turned upside down. They don't even have a say in all of this. What a change this must have been. We are told that these young men were taken from nobility. In verses 3 and 4, then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. Though they have been ripped from their homeland, their kin, their culture, they're not alone. These young men, led, it seems, by Daniel's desire to maintain some semblance of their heritage. They will have to learn this new culture, but they also know they must remain faithful to their God, Jehovah of Israel. We read in verse 8, but Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. God remembered his promise he made centuries before about this time of exile. In Leviticus chapter 26, verses 44 and 45, we read, yet for all that, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not spurn them, neither will I abhor them, so as to destroy them utterly, and break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God. But I will, for their sake, remember the covenant with their forefathers, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt, in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. As we have seen in other books of the Old Testament, God's providence surrounds his beloved people. As Daniel, who was renamed Belteshazzar, and his companions, Hananiah, who would become Shadrach, Mishael, who would become Meshach, and Azariah, who would become Abednego, they set their hearts to be faithful to the Lord. They are blessed and become instruments of his will there in the foreign land. As we shall see, it is more than just a testimony of faith, so to speak. They shall stand up against the great Nebuchadnezzar and show him that the God of heaven is God. Not only that, but they shall be elevated in rank. Daniel himself shall transcend the reign of the Babylonians and become great in the succeeding empire of the Medo-Persians under Darius and Cyrus. Yes, God can use those of great faith to do his will. One wonders if this same message will preach, as they say, today. Can young people be convinced to hang on to their faith against all odds so that God can bless them and the world around them? Perhaps we ought to read what Paul said in Romans 15:4. For whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through the encouragement of the Scriptures, we might have hope. I wonder if young people are seeing that example in Christians around them today. And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another of the great chapters in the Bible.